This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/Mapper Forward to find out how you can become a member today. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and I'm joined by Jonas for another episode talking about Brazil. We were talking about frost in the last episode, and now we're going to talk about exactly how that ended up affecting the trees and the cherries and the yield and etc, etc, etc. So what happened to the trees when the three frost events came?
Yeah, the frost, it's have different degrees depending of the plant age and which area and region the coffee field are located. It's like when we got a skin burn, there's a levels of skin burn.
Okay.
So it's a level of frost to frost burn, because frost burns too. Like if you go to some cold place, many people have this problem because they affect the cells of coffee and in any kind of living being, because they break the cell. The content of the cell was affected. So if the cell breaks, the cell do not works as expected.
Right.
So in some places we have total burn, so the trees was totally affected since the top until the root. It was the places that we have temperatures close to -4 degrees Celsius. In these places, we have to take all the trees out and start again.
So you literally have to rip them out of the ground?
Yeah, because some trees could survive, but it's very risky to stay with a low population of coffee trees, because we have so many. It's like a Swiss cheese with many holes. So this is not good because the costs of production are related with the area, not with the coffee trees that I have in the area. Because I need to do the same amount of work, mostly the same amount of work, if I have like 4,000 trees or 3,000 trees. But 3,000 trees means less coffee, so less yield, less profit. So it's easier to take, it's not easier, but it's the right thing to do, to take all the trees out and start again with a new variety, and wait 3 years until we got a new harvest. In some areas, the roots were very well preserved, so we could prune in a way that we called stump, because we have just a small piece of
the
tree,
branch, like the trunk of
the trunk, just the trunk, no leaves. And then the plant start to break the energy that is inside that trunk. Like us, they use a physiology way to break the carbohydrates, and then the plant start to sprout again. In 2 years we have a new season, so we got 1 year less than if we replant everything. So in some places just cut everything, and now the sprouts are beautiful, and with about 45 centimeters of height, and probably because we have good rain season in January. And the last and the worst case, it's when the frost just hits the branches from outside, but preserve the branch inside. So we use a technique of pruning that take all the branches and just leave the whole trunk, and then we start to sprout again. And in these techniques, in 2 years, we have a huge season. Some farmers use that in years that we have a very low yield. So instead of harvesting the low yield, the farmer prune everything in order to have a huge yield in the next season. So this is the three levels that I think it's important to understand what happens in the coffee trees. Just to get an idea, the number says that we have about 2 millions of hectares of coffee area, and about 200,000 hectares was affected by frost in some way in different levels. So about 10% of the area was affected by frost.
And was the majority of that leaning towards minimally affected or seriously affected?
About, let me say, 60 to 70% was affected in a way that the yields from the next year was really damaged by frost. Most of the area was in these 200,000 hectares was affected in order to reduce the yields. And the major problem, like take all the trees out, is maybe about 20%. Most of the farmers could use some prune technique to save the field.
20% of the 200,000, not 20% of the total production. Okay.
Yeah, which was like worst affected.
And in a coffee producing country like Brazil, it being the largest producer of coffee in the world, it's not insignificant, right? 20% is still a reasonable amount of damage if producers have to pull out trees and wait 3 years to start. And question, and I forgive my naivety before I ask this question, but I'm not an agronomist. When it hits the 3 years, is it usually an up year, or is it usually a lower year?
Oh, it's depending. Now we are, in my opinion, I saw maybe an inversion of up year and down year this season, because last year we have a lower season with about, like I said, I think 46 million or 48 million bags. And the expectation for this season, it's about 55 million bags. But the coffee is very healthy for the next season, 2023. So some specialists that saying that we could reach like 68 to 70 million bags in 2023, because the coffee tree is kind of resting. Because if you not have yields in some areas, the coffee tree is resting, saving energy for a good blossom in September of this year. But like I said to many people, this means that we should wait, because there are forecasts, but we need the climate to collaborate until the harvest for more than a year in advance. So for now, I saw the fields are beautiful, very green, very prepared for have a beautiful blossom in September of 2022 and a good harvest in 2023, which should be a down year. But because of the
weather
climate,
can hear you. The weather is listening to you.
Yeah, I hope so. So we should wait, because forecast is just a thing. I always said, if someone asking me about the yields, I said my opinion just have 1 day of expiration date, because in the next day I don't know what happens. Now the situation is that this not means that we're gonna harvest a good season 2023. We need many stuff to say that, which sometimes is not really related to climate. Like in 2020, we are facing a pandemic, and some farmers are worried about if they have people to harvest the coffee in the proper time, because we have some kind of blocks between the states. So it's not just about climate. Climate is just one thing. Then we have the economics, and the international market that take their own opinion about coffee.
The speculative market.
Yeah.
I like how you said that. You can take your own opinion about coffee.
Yeah. And so it is what it is. So farmers have to deal with that all year. So they are very cautious about that. It's what I saw. And then for this season, we have inflation that are affecting all the coffee chain. So the fertilizers are very expensive. The many agrochemicals are very expensive. The fuel is very expensive. The Brazilian currency was devaluating for a long time. Now it's starting to get better. So the farmers are selling coffee in a beautiful price now, but they are not as happy they should be, because the costs are very high, and the next season will be not so great. So it's not just about the international price. It's a lot of stuff that's happening around to see if we have 7 million bags or not in 2023.
Well, hold on to your hat, because there's a world war on our doorstep and a global financial collapse. So, you know, what else could go wrong, right?
Yeah, just normal stuff.
Normal stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about inflation and the consequences of the frost and all the other normal stuff in the next episode.
Yeah.
On that note, peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.